Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and well, I gotta be honest with you, I never thought we'd see this. This is Mobile Suit Gundam Extreme vs Maxiboost On. For those of you who are familiar with this series, you would know that this isn't exactly a normal occurrence, because this series has never been very good at getting localized officially. It came out as Gundam vs. Gundam Zeta Plus back in like 05 or something like that. Then none of this series got localized all the way up to Force. And that's skipping like 5 entries. Like more than 5 entries actually. It's probably closer to 8. And then, yeah, Force gets localized on the Vita. And most people that really enjoy the series are like, Force isn't very good. And then Bandai Namco says something along the lines of, alright, we're going to try something different now. We're going to make a completely different version of the series for home localization and then keep the arcade series as its own separate thing. And then that turned into Gundam Versus, which wasn't very well received either. Because, well, reasons? There's a few things about that game that aren't really that great, like the lack of certain suits or the way they changed some of the moves. I personally like the fact that you could boost and get straight to the ground, but some people didn't, apparently. And then Bandai Namco are like, you know what? Screw it. Screw the entire thing. We're just gonna port the last version that we could conceivably get away with without losing Japanese arcade revenue and release that worldwide same day. Which they haven't been able to do before, but they've done it now for some reason. So yeah, if you have been paying attention to the video footage in the background for the last 2 minutes, this is a 2-on-2 fighting game, although in this single-player mission mode, there is definitely a bit more than 2-on-2 sometimes. And it is incredibly fast. There's tons of different mobile suits you can use, because I'm literally just playing on random suits, so you'll be seeing a ridiculous amount of variety going on here. I just managed to hit my own dude in the face. That was absolutely fantastically timed. But there's a ridiculous amount of suits, a ridiculous amount of variety. It's super fast, and it's an arcade port. So unlike Force, it's got all of the moves. It's got all of the suits. It's got all of the content going on, namely branch battles. And of course, it's got online play and plenty of collectibles to go through. The gameplay is, well, it's very simple on the surface, but there are a lot of mechanics going on in the background. So the controls are pretty simple to understand. You've got 4 buttons, and one of them is your melee button, one of them is your ranged button, one of them is to swap target lock, and one of them is to boost. And using different combinations of these buttons will give you different sub-moves. So if you hit like square and triangle at once, they'll get you a sub-range. But if you hit like triangle and, is it X? I'd be lying if I said I remember, because there's a reason for that. You'd get a different melee move. It depends on the suit, of course, because there's 183 different suits in this game, and they've all got different movesets. So you need to be wary of that. Thankfully, the game makes it relatively easy in the sense that you can press the shoulder buttons, and they count as 2 button presses at once. So you can hit like L1, for example, and it'll be square and triangle at the same time, so it just automatically throws out a special move. Very useful for actually trying to play this game properly, because actually trying to play it on a PlayStation 4 pad via using like 2 buttons at once is very difficult to get a hang of. But there are all sorts of minor mechanics going on in the background as well. Like there's one that you absolutely have to learn, like right out from the beginning. And that is the fact that you can do cancels. And there are plenty of different kinds of cancels. For example, the one that every single player needs to learn immediately is how to fire a beam rifle or a weapon similar to it quite rapidly by double tapping the X button to do a boost dash, and then pressing the square button to fire off a beam shot, and then doing a double tap of the X button again to do a beam, to do a cancel, and then to fire another shot. That is something that you need to learn basically immediately for doing huge amounts of damage. You've also got all sorts of other different little maneuvers like that. Like you've got boost stepping. You've got stepping, I should say, not boost stepping, but you've got stepping by double tapping the analog stick to the left, right, backwards, or forwards. And doing stepping plus hammering away at the triangle button will give you different melee combos. Some weapons have a charge attack that you can use by holding down the square or triangle button. Sometimes you have to do both. But of course, you can also just hold down like the L1 button for that, because it's literally just one-for-one mapping to the shoulder buttons. And there are all sorts of other like ridiculous moves and combos that you can learn for each suit for increasing amounts of damage, and it gets deep. It gets really deep, and considering that most of these matches don't last longer than, like, say, 2 minutes, it can get really, really in-depth. And you notice this as soon as you play the game, because the skill ceiling is enormous, and anyone who is even remotely skilled can beat the crap out of you without so much as taking a hit. This is something I have done once to a complete noob, and it was immensely satisfying to do, I promise you that. And because all of the suits are so different, it means that there is not only a lot of variety, but there is a ton of chances that a suit will be in the sort of gameplay style that you might like. And this ties back into the energy bar system, which is unique for this kind of game, which I say is like a fighting game. So you've got your team and your enemy bars in the top left there, right? And the way this works is that it's called the cost system. And you can use different mobile suits, and these mobile suits have different costs assigned to them. So, say the Unicorn Gundam, which is one of the strongest suits in the game, is a 3,000 cost suit. So, you cost half of the bar, because the bar by default is 6,000 cost. But there are some suits, like the EZ-8. No, this isn't the EZ-8, I apologize. I think this is the Ground-type Gundam. And the Ground-type Gundam has a cost of, I think, like 2,000. The regular Gundam has a cost of 2,000, but they're not as strong. They have lesser movesets, they do less damage per hit. They're just harder to go up against higher cost suits in general, right? But you get repaid for that by the fact that when you get destroyed, it only takes a certain amount out of the cost meter. So, when you have a team of two, that is, say, a Unicorn Gundam and a Strike Freedom Gundam, which are 3,000 cost, basically, when either of those die once, that'll be enough to deplete their cost bar, because the suits that are spawned at the beginning also count as cost. So you kind of got to think of it as taking a loan. You're taking a loan out by taking out 3,000 cost suits, and if both of those die, you don't have anything left to cover the loan with, so you lose. It's a bit of a weird analogy, I know, but if I'm being honest, I had trouble understanding exactly how this worked for a while after I started playing. And I started playing back on the bloody PS3 version of Extreme vs. Full Boost, so I've had a lot of time to think about it, and I still have trouble getting my head around it. It can be kind of a bitch sometimes, but yeah, basically, the weaker suits take less cost, and the more expensive suits take more cost. So making a team is actually a pretty complicated procedure, because not only do you have things like positioning to think about, like who's more appropriate to go up front, like the Gundam Barbatos, which is very much used to being up front and in melee, should be up front and in melee. But when you get different suits that have different roles on a team, it starts getting more complicated. And so having different combinations with different suits with different costs makes things much more interesting. So you can have someone up front whose job is basically to be distracting, while a high cost but like low on the fragility scale mobile suit is in the back just assaulting them with ridiculous amounts of beam shots. Or you can have two melee suits that just come in and distract like an annoying ass Epion, because I fucking hate the Epion. It basically just gets a couple of free melee combos and that's it. It's predictable, but it's also really hard to deal with because it's super fucking fast. But yes, team composition, really important. Control over your mobile suits, very important. Knowing every single individual technique, very important. Can you see why the skill ceiling on these games can be extremely high? And I'm not even getting into some of the more advanced tactics, strategies, and just general abilities that you've got, because frankly I don't even know half of them. honestly, one of the main things I've been doing when I've been playing this Maxiboost mission mode here is I've been playing as random mobile suits as much as humanly possible, because you just want to try and get in as many of them as possible, because as I said, there's 138 of them, and they're all very different. They're all like ridiculously different in how some of them handle and feel and play. Some of them are ridiculously heavy, some of them are so light on their feet it's like being in the middle of a bloody beam and metal ballet. It's seriously varied, and it's incredibly enjoyable just popping into a new mobile suit and thinking, what the hell is this thing going to do? Because I haven't seen very many Gundam series. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you right there. And this is absolutely the best way to experience them. At the highest speed possible, with all of their moves available, and looking pretty goddamn amazing in the process. Like, seriously, the Crossbone Gundam X3 just having a nuke. That's just genuinely some kind of nuke, and it looks amazing too. Like, the technical performance of this game is mostly great. There's a couple of things that kind of get in the way, but for the most part, it runs at a full 60 frames per second. It's very well optimized. And if you're not playing with shitty people over the net play, none of your inputs are going to get dropped. You're going to get, well, I say millisecond, but you're going to get some really quick reactions. It feels appropriately speedy and responsive to play, which is good, because if it isn't, then this game would be no fun. There's also a lot of music from the official Gundam licenses, whether it be the anime or the games. It plays all the time, and it's great. There's nothing wrong with it. Although it's a bit weird when you know a couple of the tunes off by heart. Like, I know the Unicorn theme for some reason. I don't know why. It's just the first thing that I can remember from that series, and hearing it come up when there are 4 not even close to related Unicorn suits is a little bit strange, but then again, the game is like, okay, we'll just let you do that, because we know that playing online will get a little bit annoying if you're on the same map all the time looking at you, Side 7. But yes. So there are 3 different modes. Well, there's 2 different single-player modes in the game. We'll go over that, although one of them is technically not single-player, but again, we'll get to it. And you've been seeing footage from the first mode for a while now. This is the Maxiboost missions. For those of you who've played Mobile Suit Gundam Extreme vs. Force on the Vita, you'll know that the single player in that game had this weird story going on where you were this guy who was in this computer, and the computer was recreating multiple situations from Mobile Suit Gundam, and you just needed to go and sort them out in order for the computer to not be destroyed. Well, that's basically the same thing in this mode, but there's no story to justify it. It's literally just a bunch of standalone missions. They also took out how you need to upgrade mobile suits individually, and instead just give you one big platter to put all these upgrades on that are just straight stat boosts. So anything from how effective your boosting is, to how effective your melee is, to just all your stats in general, just all of these little things. And you can also do things like power up your AI teammates and what have you. So you end up playing through a bunch of individual missions. Some of them are designed to recreate like parts of the canon. Like, you'll be locked into a certain suit from time to time and you'll need to go against certain missions. But most of the missions will let you play with whatever mobile suit you want. As I said before, I've been playing as random, and I recommend that you do the same thing. Mainly because if you don't, you won't get the opportunity to try out all the suits. But also, it's kind of annoying because chances are, if you want to be going for all the S ranks, which are determined by time, damage, and whether or not you get defeated or not, you're going to want to be playing as 3000 cost suits most of the time. So you're not going to have the opportunity to go for the S ranks if you're trying to, if you want to play as your favorite suit for a while. That can kind of suck, but at the same time, since upgrades take a while to unlock anyway, because you need to get S ranks on certain missions to unlock certain upgrades, and there are also upgrades for clearing every mission with an S rank, and there are also some for just, you know, for leveling up. So you need XP to level up, and you get that at the end of every mission. And once you level up, you just get bonuses like GP and well, upgrades that you can apply. So chances are you're not going to be getting the S ranks from the very beginning. So as I said before, I would probably tell you to go for just going random all the time. And just trying to figure out what suits you like. Because once you go online, you're going to need to know at least one suit. I will get onto my online experiences once I'm done with the single player stuff. But yes, there are about 300 missions, and there's a fair amount of variety in them. You've got fixed suit missions, you've got missions that basically just throw waves of enemies at you that you need to attack, and there are time attack and score attack missions, which are determined by how well you do in speed and damage, basically. There might be more later on, because I am nowhere near the end of these missions, because as you'll see in the menu when I go back out to it, I am at a completion of something like 20%, and based purely on math I did with jiggering around with the numbers, there's about 300 missions, so there are plenty of little areas to go through. There are plenty of missions to do, and considering that I spent like 4 or 5 hours on these missions alone, yeah, there's a fair few of them, and they will keep you occupied for a pretty good majority of the game. Well, I like it. I liked the way that Extreme vs. Force was basically just a bunch of standalone missions to let you try out a bunch of suits and just play off a different set of enemies against each other all the time. And this game basically does the same thing, but without the silly story or the weird only upgrade one mobile suit at a time thing to, you know, to justify it. So, yeah, it's an improvement for me personally. It just gives me something to do if I don't want to go online and play against the people who will absolutely kick my ass. There is also a second single-player mode, of which there is footage of at the very end of this video footage, and that is Branch Battle. And Branch Battle is the arcade mode that basically they included it because it's part of the arcade mode, and the idea is you've got 5 places you can start from, and then you can go up or down the mission roster, and sometimes you'll unlock like different kinds of missions depending on the score that you get. The branch is exactly the same though. It's not like different for every suit, it's the same for every single one. So you'll be seeing, like, at the very beginning, you'll be seeing the same 2 boss encounters at the beginning. You'll also be unlocking EX missions on the same set of branches, and you'll be seeing them every time you go on a new run. So it's a little bit of a shame that it doesn't, like, change it up in some way. I can see some people getting pretty bored of it as they go through. And you have to go through it at least 5 times if you want the platinum, because you need to finish every single version of the final boss in order to get the platinum. So that can be a little bit annoying, and considering that you got to stick with the same suit all the way through, that can also be kind of annoying, because you kind of want a little bit of variety, and the variety that you get via playing the branch missions with the branch missions with the random mobile suit on is interesting. You can choose to go in with a random mobile suit every single time, and you'll get a different random mobile suit on every single branch level, but it might also give you some really annoying combinations. It's not that big of a deal when it comes to it's not that big of a deal when it comes to the missions, at least not yet, because these missions have been relatively easy. It's not like you're going to get the shit kicked out of you if you come in with a bad combination. But here's the thing. When you get randomly assigned a mobile suit in this game, it also randomly assigns the burst. Now, the burst is basically a, what would you call it, like a rage mechanic? And there are 3 different kinds of boosts that you can apply to a mobile suit. You can apply a fighting burst, which makes you really fast with your melee, allows you to cancel melee attacks that you otherwise normally wouldn't, and it also makes you more powerful in general. There is also a shooting burst equivalent, which refills all your ammo, gives you a ton of, like, boost back, so you can apply it in midair when you're out of boost and then immediately get your boost back and just continue boosting around. And it also makes it so that you can cancel certain shooting moves that you otherwise wouldn't be able to, so you can just absolutely go ham with the beam weapons. There is also an extend burst, which is a bit of an in-between. It gives you a bit of everything. It doesn't let you cancel like your shooting or your fighting moves, but it does make you a bit stronger. It gives you some burst back, a boost back I could say, and it makes it so that you're just generally more effective for a bit of time. The thing is though, there is a chance that you might get given a burst type that is completely useless with the suit that you're running. So for example, if you're using the... what's a good example? If you're using the Epion, for example, and you get a shooting burst, it's not going to be very useful because the Epion is 100% more useful in melee than it is ranged. And there are a fair few other examples of that. Like the Atlas, for example. Really good shooting because it's just got these really useful like sets of moves that can really throw people off when it comes to their shooting ability. But if you get a fighting burst, it's just not going to be that useful to you. And it might give you a bad example of how you're supposed to use it, or like how a particular unit is more useful when you use like a shooting burst, for example. That can definitely come back to haunt you from time to time. And when it happens in a branch battle, where the combat is designed to be a lot more intense and a lot more like faithful to the game that you're going to be playing online with other people, just as an example, it can be quite frustrating to deal with. And then when you restart, you're given another suit just at random, so you have to learn that one as well in the middle of some potentially very hard combat. Like I even picked like a suit that I'm relatively used to, question mark, but I still didn't do too well, and I basically gave up as soon as I needed to continue because I wasn't going to be taking down the Extreme versus Gundam with a suit that I wasn't particularly great with. And yeah, that can be kind of annoying. It's not that big of a deal once you've got your favorite mobile suits down. I'm just pointing it out because, again, this is a first impression series, and despite the fact that I'm still I'm still somewhat familiar, I shouldn't say pretty familiar, but I'm still somewhat familiar with Gundam Versus as a game. It still can be kind of annoying for those of you coming in for the first time and thinking, oh, it gave me this suit with this shooting burst, but this suit is completely useless with a shooting burst. I should also point out that you do get like a super combo that you can throw out by going into burst again while you've activated your burst. But that's generally not something that's affected by what type of burst you've got, so it's not like it's too important. It's also something that you might not have very much opportunity to get out. Like, some of the burst moves are absolutely fucking awesome. Like, the first time I used the Astray Red Frame in Extreme vs. Full Boost, and it has the same move here, so don't think I'm not talking about this game, but the first time I used it, and I managed to get a burst out, and it was this gigantic fucking sword that was the size of a skyscraper, just coming down and beating the absolute shit out of a dude. Was the most satisfying thing I could possibly imagine. But yes, it's something else entirely. It's always disappointing when you see that, when you successfully manage to pull that off in the middle of an online match, and then you go for something like the Full Armor Gundam, and all it's got is just like a series of accelerated moves just going at the same person. And considering that you probably had to stun them and knock off one of the hits that they've got going for them, it can be kind of disappointing when the last shot doesn't even land. But yeah, there are a few things I actually really like about the Gundam versus way of doing things in fighting games. Like, one of the things that most frustrates me about fighting games is being locked into combos that you can't get out of. One of the things that there's two things that you can do about that. One is that if you're in a combo and you're willing to sacrifice some burst time, you can actually set off your burst immediately and it'll actually jump you straight out of the combo and you can get back on the attack. Although if you aren't very quick about it, they'll just immediately come back in and get another combo on you. But the second thing that you can do is... Wow, I just completely... No, the second thing about it that improves the gameplay for me in general is that the longer the combo gets, the less damage is done. So it's still more effective to get these really long combos in. But not only are these long combos relatively short, especially by the standards of these games, of fighting games in general, I should say, But the more hits they land, the less damage they do. So eventually, they'll do like 50 to 100 damage on their first hit, but when they're down into like the last hits of their combo, they'll be down to like 2 or 3 damage per hit. There's like 1 or 2 suits that this doesn't seem to apply fairly to. Again, looking at the Epion is just a dick about it, but it's really the only move that it's got. So, it's like, it's understandable why they did it from a balance perspective, but when every other unit somehow manages to, like, not do that much damage, even other 3,000 cost suits at the end of their combos, it can still be annoying, but it's like the only suit in the game that does that. And really, the Epion's only for noobs that need a crutch. But yes, it does that, which I like. So, noobs aren't going to be absolutely blasted into full-on ridiculous combos all the time. And you also don't get that much time in the air with boost, so boost management is very important. It also means that there are going to be very frequent points where it's obvious where the enemy is going to be weak to attacks. Because the entire game works around boost and timing where you come down. So when you hit the floor, your boost will recharge very quickly, but someone who's good on their timing can always hit you. So there are always little tactics that you can learn around that as well. Like, one tactic I've been trying to teach myself lately is using that tiny little last bit of boost to just get a little bit of variation on my time where I land and recharge my boost. Most normal players can work around this, right? But new players can get a real advantage out of it just by learning to really just get that little extra bit of boost off the ground to change their landing time. Just, again, the combat is so deep, while at the same time, having all of these little niches about it are things that I always found wrong with fighting games, but I find myself enjoying much more in this game. Shorter combos, less likely to get wombo comboed out of existence, having obvious weak times that aren't like ridiculously convoluted to figure out, and just the overall pacing of it, despite the fact that it's got all of these things going for it, like short combos and the fact that you need to land a lot to recharge your boost and all that. The game is ridiculously fast still. I know I'm going back over the mechanics again, but seriously, I don't know half of them, and I'm still impressed by how deep it is just by jumping in and playing it. So the game does have, I was talking about the bloody branch paddles before, but I'm pretty sure we're off that subject. I seem to be getting off topic a lot when it comes to this series. I did that a lot back when I was in doing my Force video, and there's a reason why that video was like an hour and 20 minutes long. But yes, there are some unlockables you can get as well. I do a bit of menuing between the, between this footage and the footage of the branch battles. But I also show off some of the replays, which is a really nice system. They have some really in-depth replay systems in this. You can, not only can you look at your own replays from every single angle, whether it be from the UI of the opponent's perspective, of your perspective, you can see all 4 of them at once, but it drops the frame rate of the game to 30 FPS, which is understandable considering how much it has to render. You can also go online and view random people's replays. There is literally a button that you can press in the replays menu that lets you watch random replays. And I did that just to show off how all the replays and what all their features are and how they look, and show some gameplay that isn't of me getting my ass kicked in the beginner's room of Gundam vs. Australia. Because, well, to be fair, I haven't gotten my ass thoroughly kicked, but I've been doing relatively well for myself. Let's just say that. I've been getting like a win rate of like 40-50%, which I will take, considering that I'm still relatively new at these series of games. But yeah, you've got a ton of replay features, which is really nice. The game also saves your replays, and by replays I mean your all recent replays, but at the same time, I had something like 60 replays saved when I first recorded this footage. So let's just say if you want to go and save a particular replay, you're going to have a fair amount of time to do it and figure out which replay it is. You've also got ranked play and just like casual play, which is nice. You've also got the main type of play, which is go online, find a room, join a team, and just play like that for a while, which is what most of the people here do. I'm gonna have to get someone to help me grind up to like Lieutenant 2nd rank so I can get the platinum trophy for it. And all of those online play styles. So here's the thing about Gundam Extreme Versus, if you haven't figured it out by watching the last half hour of this footage. The thing about it is that you need really good, you need really good internet connections with low ping. There is no way that you're going to be able to play this game internationally with friends, because it needs to keep everything in track. If it doesn't keep everything in track, it is absolutely miserable. The game slows to a crawl, you get lag spikes, you get input dropping, you get all of those sorts of things. And considering how fast and how in sync this game needs to be satisfying, it's understandable. But I gotta tell you, man, even doing so much as playing on a 4G connection is enough to screw you up in this game sometimes. Even people on the same continent with relatively crap upload will have trouble keeping up with this, because I've played with people who are in Australia who are still absolutely terrible when it comes to their internet connections. And you'll lag really badly, even with them. Like, I was playing against these two people. One of them was Australian, had a really bad connection. And every single time that they would be attacked, whether it be by me or by my teammate, the game would noticeably stutter. And in this game, where doing something as simple as XX square in order to fire off a lot of beam shots is really important, throwing off your timing, even by milliseconds, is enough to really screw you over. And it can be so frustrating when you lose a match because every single time someone attacked you, it threw off your combos, so you couldn't carry on your combos, or it threw off your attacks or something like that. And even then they get an advantage, because they're the ones who get to wail on you with like no regards to their connection properties whatsoever. And as a result, it's created a sort of, it has basically created a sort of bigotry towards people who are on really shit connections. And I understand it completely. I absolutely understand it completely, because when the game gets that bad over something as simple as like relatively low upload caps, man, it can be frustrating. It's so discernible that people playing on Wi-Fi are consistently different in comparison to people who are playing on LAN connections. Hell, I play on LAN connections all the time. Trust me, I would notice. So yeah, basically the idea is, if you're not in a country like Japan, where there are going to be people playing online constantly, try and find a group that you can play with on your own continent. That's the way you go about it. I found the Gundam vs. Australia people when I was looking for a community to play this with. And while the names that you'll be going up against are relatively similar most of the time, you'll at least still have a decent sense of community going on. They were hosting tournaments, and I mean, I wasn't going to participate in them because I am bloody terrible. But yes, you can do that. You can play with a bunch of people that you know on your continent, and you'll be doing much better for yourself. And frankly, I probably wouldn't recommend buying the game if you're not in one of those communities personally, because man, it can be kind of difficult to play this game online with randoms, especially since it's 2 versus 2. And chances are the random you're going to come up with isn't going to know how to play the game at all. It's going to be fun to deal with randoms online in this, which is why the recommendation in the Gundam vs. Australia community, at the very least, is get 4 people together, hop into the ranked battles, and just grind until you get those trophies, and then just put it down and never touch it again. Go back to the lobbies. There is also plenty of customizability to be had. So you can pick both a navigation a battle navigation and a menu navigation. It's a bit weird like that. And they're basically just voiced clips of all of these characters. There is a ridiculous amount of customization of the user interface. There's like 200 different user interfaces. You can make titles unbelievably flashy, and you can do all sorts of little things like that. These are all unlocked as you get mobile suit familiarity, but to get mobile suit familiarity up, you need to play an absolute ton of matches. I played something like 75 matches as the Unicorn Gundam, and it didn't even put me above 1 star, so you will absolutely need to be playing a lot of matches. But thankfully, using GP, which is a resource you earn in every single kind of fight, you can unlock pretty much anything. You can unlock different navis, you can unlock different customizations for the titles, you can unlock different, you can upgrade your mobile suits, your different emblems, your different, basically everything that you can unlock using proficiency or suit familiarity or whatever the hell you want to call it game. You can unlock using GP. Although, in Maxiboost missions, you also need to use it to upgrade your abilities there, which can be kind of annoying because it costs a fair amount of money to do it there, and if you want to unlock something, you just kind of need to be saving a lot of money for it. Although the more matches you play, the more GP you're going to be unlocking anyway, so it's not that big a deal, especially if you go online. Seriously, go online. You'll on the lobbies, I should say. You get like 300 GP per match, and since matches are only a couple of minutes, that's the best way to grind it out. You've also got plenty of options for looking at all of the series and stuff they've got going on. It's a bit weird they imply that they've got movies going on there, but they're basically just like pre-rendered in-engine movies. Just as like, you know, just custom intros. But you can also go and have a look at all the different kinds of mobile suits that are available, all the different pilots. Some of the names of the pilots are freaking weird, man. Like Quattro Bagina. If you know anything about Gunpla, you know why that name is absolutely hilarious. You do also unlock figures every time you defeat a mobile suit in the roster, and that will give you GP rewards for every set that you've completed, which is nice. Considering that it put me up to like 40,000 GP, it's pretty cool. It's a shame that they don't give you like 3D rotatable, like posable looks at them, you know? Just something that let you look at the mobile suits, because the mobile suit modeling in this game is gorgeous. There's no denying that they've put a ridiculous amount of effort into all the different models that they've got going on in the game. So yeah, that was me just rambling on about Mobile Suit Gundam for about, what, Extreme versus Maxiboost on for about 40 minutes. The gameplay is ridiculously deep. There's a ton of variety thanks to the fact that it's got over 180 mobile suits. There's a fair amount of single-player content. That Maxiboost mode is going to take you several hours to get through. It's also got online scoreboards if you care about that sort of thing. The online gameplay, as long as everyone's got a good connection and is on the same continent, is generally great. And the replay functionality in particular is fantastic. Also, I should point out that on Branch Battle, I forgot to mention this a lot earlier, but for Branch Battle, you have the ability to play that not only in co-op, but online, which is great. So you can play with a friend, or you can play with a friend locally or online, which is really cool, honestly. If only I had friends. But at the same time, it's an incredibly deep fighting game, and it's one of those ones where you will need to spend a lot of time to get used to it, and you will need a good group of friends, whether it be like your fighting game buddies or a like online community focused on Extreme Versus. And I would absolutely recommend, if you plan on buying this, to get into one of those communities, because as cool as it is to go around and beat the crap out of a bunch of AI-controlled mobile suits with all these fancy effects and everything, the game is only truly satisfying when you're beating the absolute bejesus out of another dude, and you know for a fact that you outplayed them, and defeating like a 3,000 cost mobile suit, the top of the roster, with a 2,000 cost mobile suit, is one of the most satisfying things that exists in the world of video games. It's more satisfying than beating that one boss in Dark Souls. It's more satisfying than pulling off a good combo in Devil May Cry. It's also ridiculously fast, very pretty, and like it sounds great too. It is legitimately a great port. I'm not going to complain too much about the netcode, because netcode for a game like this is ridiculous. Like, seriously, we're talking about milliseconds making the difference between winning and losing, so keeping that sort of thing in sync would be an absolute nightmare. And I absolutely, positively understand why it works the way that it does. But I gotta tell you, man, pulling out a victory at the very last second when you're on the back foot and it looks like you're losing is one of the most satisfying things. Again. And there is just... It's so cool. It is such a good goddamn game. It is such a good series. And the fact that they've finally, instead of making like a worse version for us in the form of like new Gundam Breaker or Gundam Versus, instead of bringing over the one that was just really like not so much shoddily put together as much as compromised for the sake of the Vita and its capabilities, the fact that they finally gone to the effort of bringing over this goddamn series day and date with the Japanese side of things, like, about time, and the awesomeness of the game shines through. One last thing I will point out, though, is that the localization isn't perfect. Sometimes the wording can be confusing. Like, I tried to figure out what they meant by the bloody Gold Plus they put on certain missions in the Maxiboost one, because the tutorial was so badly worded that it basically gives you no idea. And there's a fair few, like, typos and just, like, things missing here and there. It's not massively noticeable. The game runs fine without them, and frankly, you'll be better off, like, looking up strategies on YouTube and something like that anyway. But yeah, I gotta tell you, man, it can be a little bit rough from time to time. Here comes the giant sword! Yes! Giant fucking sword, man! Oh, I love that sword so much. It's so dumb, but it works so well. Yeah, as you can tell, I was kind of obsessed with this Astray Red Frame's performance. Like, going up toe-to-toe against an Epion and living is, like, one of the best things. I also appreciate all of the little animations they got going on at the end here, especially when you lose, because some of them are hilarious. One of my personal favorites is there was a unicorn sitting there. I was a unicorn and my teammate was the Zeta Gundam, and the unicorn was sitting there with like its legs blown off and the rest of it was sparking. And the Zeta just, like, immediately turns into its, like, flying mode, and then just is like, fuck you, I'm out, bye, and just zooms off to the top left corner of the screen. It's such great comedic timing that it's hard to believe it's taken seriously, but, yeah. It's, yeah, I absolutely recommend Gundam Extreme Versus Maxiboost on. Just please, find a good multiplayer community and play with them, because that's the absolute best way to play Extreme Versus. But if you absolutely need like single player content, the Maxiboost Missions mode will do you fine. It's got tons of content. It does get hard. It's not an absolute cakewalk. And I just wish there was a better tutorial, but you know, it's a fighting game. But it's kind of hard to do it with those. I can't even imagine. Like, it does try and give you a tutorial as part of the Maxiboost Missions mode, but it's just a series of text screens followed up by a really easy fight that doesn't even try to make you use the particular mechanics that it's teaching you about. It's really weird. Yeah, I'm gonna shut up now before I start going even more into the game's mechanics or what have you. So this has been Blue Maxima. There'll be some branch battle footage for you to watch after I shut up. I'll see you all next time.
Gundam がそれをミッション終了。エクシア帰還する。止めさせてもらう。援護に回ってください。リボーンズガンダム行く。どこチャレンジだチャレンジ。俺たちがガンダムだ。マスラを改めスタロー目標をいざ尋常に勝負尽くすな。気の進まない作戦ではあるが、何事にも真摯に向き合わなくて。敵が武装を強化したらまともにやり合う。この時間を稼げば元に戻る。それが全力かい。そんな攻撃を誘い込んでいる。大した玉だよ。このリボーンズガンダムに死角などない。ついてないのか。なめる敵。死にたいか。楽しんでいくという。をつかめたようだ。そこ。それでも僕が相手なら倒されたことにも納得していただけるかな。さあどう出る。モンゴベルを舐めてもらっては困る。君から死にたいのかね。僕が撃つ。そこ。このリボーンズガンダムに死角などない。敵の損傷が激しすぎる。油断は敵の挑発に乗るな。味方をフリーさせているぞ。この程度かい。楽しんでいく。動きが決まっている敵をなぜ見逃すかな。甘いなしているよ。もうボタンだ。敵は倒されている。理にかなったそれは妖怪のやる訓練だ。GN ドライブ。これでギルヌクルすべき。いける。もう撃墜されることは許される。楽にしてあげよう。傷一つついていないよ。敵の攻撃範囲外まで後退しろ。今すぐだ。ファングありがとうと言うべきところだね。踏ん張りきれなかったか。そう不必要な存在は早めに消して。もう少し頑張れ。もう少し頑張れ。 気の進まない作戦ではあるが、何事にも真摯に向き合わなくては。
味方の前を
それが全力
お前が盾となる。
当てる。そんな攻撃
味方はそちらの指揮下に気を配ってくれ。
見つけたよ。君の未来もね。やるじゃないか。この間抜けめ。そこだ。おお、驚いただな。このリボーンズガンダム。
連邦の軍人で
そう
は
はいかんぞ。
命令は命に変えても成功した。
傷一つついていないよ。
理不尽なもの
そ
だっ
れが全
たとしても
力かい。手加減ができなくてね。もう少し手応えが欲しかったのだがね。
貴様のようなのがいるから戦いは終わらないんだ。
おやおや、しびれを切らせてしまったのかな。マニケメバカだ。そんなことがすまないね。君の力が必要になった。
枝を見ろ。
利用させてもらう。まったく余計なことを。すまない。
うまく敵を誘い込んで
傷一つ
した玉だよ。
油断はできないようだね。行くぞ。僕としたことがおお、やるじゃないか。この程度かい。やるじゃない
解ける限り希望を捨てるな。なすべきことをなせ。
楽しんでいくといい。正しい未来を作る手伝いだよ。光栄に思ってほしい。それが全体楽にしてやるよ。俺の体をみんなに貸すぞ。その気ももはや利用価値は。
ここまでは順調だ。爪をどうするぜ。
傷一つついていない。よし、まさか
この流れを
こん
逃すな。
なことが。逃げられまい。僕を叩けなかった君たちの負けだよ。
それが真の
なんだと。油断はできないようだ。前からと。
何やってんだ。
太陽炉。
敵の攻撃範囲外まで後退しろ。今すぐだ。
それが全力だ。
解ける限り希望を捨てるな。
どうということはない。
どうしてこんなことに。
不必要な存在は早めに消した。
もう少し頑張れ。もう少し頑張れ。どこ行くの。難しい難しい。
ついに審判が下される。そこか。
味方の前を
手加減ができなくて
お前が盾と
すまないね。
なかなかの腕のようだな。
なめるな。
味方の指示
なかなかの腕のようだな。もちろん。
この
この技のすべて
バチバチすぎる。
こんなことが。
まで。
この
力を見せるな。
速攻が効いたな。敵の隙をうまくつけた。
やるじゃない。どうしたのか。
無駄だ。
僕が相手なら倒されたことにも納得していただけて
決してすまん。
どこに
支配下にいた人間がいなくてな。
左だと逃さんよ。受け止めろ。
正義か。
任せてやるじゃない。
機体の損傷が激しすぎる。もう思うつもりだ。
左だと前からとは邪魔すな。楽にしてあげよう。左だと頭。こんなことがもらったやるじゃないか。よし、
流れはつかめたようだな。
うるさいわね。
勝手をする者には場所。やるじゃない
解ける限り希望を捨てるな。なす
そ
べき
れが全
ことをなせ。
力かい。このさあ、もう幕引きの時間だ。
周りも進められない。
このまま終わりはしないよ。
そろそろ終わりにしよう。
随分としてよい。
女の子の心を開く。
敵のエネルギー
絶対に
すぐに相談してようやく
何？もう終わりなの？
所詮人間。
もう少し頑張れ。もう少し頑張れ。
人類はよほど戦いが好きと見える。
前衛として
前からとはこの
相手の足を止めてくれ。いいな。味方の指示任せたぞ。
当てる。このリズムエネルギーが楽しんでい
敵の
るといい。
気をつけたようだ。確実に戦力を削いでいけ。
どうしたの。さすがは僕の料理と言うべきだ。
味方を見殺しにするな。弾幕薄いぞ。
どうしても先に行きたくばこの私を倒してみよう。
まさか他が落とされたさ。何をしている。
罠にはめた
解ける
つもりだ。
限り希望を捨てるな。なすべきことをなせ。
楽にしてあげよう。ファング、これはどうかな。
よし、特上一番突っ込む。
この距離は届く。この罪は死をもって償っていただかないとね。
まだ主導権は譲ってはいない。攻勢に出る。前のつもりでかかれ。またことだよ。援護を取る。さあ今だ。
前からとは。
敵の気をつけたように。
受け止めろ。
敵の挑発に乗るな。
利用価値は
味方を孤立させているぞ。
楽。
解ける限り希望を捨てるな。
仲間を呼ぶかい。
なすべきことをなせ。
仲間を滅ぼそうというの。不必要な存在は早めに消して。
もう少し頑張れ、もう少し頑張れ。どこ行くの。難しい難しい。
人類を導くのはイノベーターではなく、この僕リボンズ・ア
ダウンまで
ルナー
敵を追い込めたら大した。
この
一つの目安にしてほしい。
死にたいか。このような子供騙し。痛みも感じないうちに仕留めよう。約束するよ。僕は強いぞ。楽し
敵の気を使い。確実に戦力を削いでいけ。
油断はできないようだね。
されるな。すぐに次が来る。ちょっと黙って。今までは分かんない。こんなことのポジションを移動しろ。
そんな攻撃やるじゃないか。GN ドライブ
主導権あるぞ。まだ時だと決まったわけ。敵の挑発に乗るな。味方を応援させているぞ。
それで追い詰めたつもりなのか。
ようやく本気を出してくれた。
当てるぜ。
こ
の程度か。油断は
敵は
できない
期待になる気が言う。全力で突っ切る。
その力
何を突出している。自分の置かれた状況ぐらい判断しろ。
命乞いでもするかね。
甘い。
期待しているよ。
主力部隊じゃない
みんな心を開いてくれて
だが遠慮
僕は
はいらん。
嬉しいよ。当てる。この
遠慮しろよ。
期待には応え
こ
られない。
んな力だ。
やってくれる
人類を束ねるもののね。リボーンズキャノン、そこだ。インファング、この距離
理にかなった
命拾いしたね。
訓練の成果だ。
ファング逃さ
今
ない。
の敵を誘い込んでいる。大した玉だよ。
こんなこともあろうかと思ってね。
ありがとうと言うべきところだね。
俺のレッドフレームかいが。
ここまで追い詰めたことを誇りに。 に審判が下される。
敵が武装を強化したらまともにやり合う。時間を稼げば僕に残るはず。
この方そこまでして勝ちたいとこの方
期待に応える。敵の挑発に乗るな。
命拾いしたね。
味方を孤立させているぞ。
前からとは死にたいか。さあどうか逃さんよ。楽にしてあげよう。
味方との連携がつく。
私が統治するというのなら
すまないね。
あの
ついう
女の子
っかりして
で帰ることなど
悪いけど俺にだって絶対に譲れないものがある。ようやく戦う気になったか。
機体の損傷が激しすぎる。
やるじゃない
思うつぼだな。
左だと今からこの距離は届く。全てが進化する。その力で歯向かうでない。やるじゃない。
限り希望を捨てる。
曲がりな子供たち大した腕じゃないか。
焦る。
逃げられない。やるじゃないか。
攻勢に出るぞ。
逃さんよ。
つもりでかかれ。
受け止めろ。
ついた。
イノベよ
ようやく本気を出して
人類の未来その余計なことこのような
動ける限り希望を捨てるな。なすべきことをなせんよ。
前からとは
ここまで誤射が多い。出る戦を勝てなくなるぞ。
楽にしてこの罪はいつか君に跳ね返るのだぞ。一つ言っておくよ。君は